My work log shows that I replaced an air filter on the third floor at 5:47 p.m. The problem is that at 5:47 p.m., I hadn't entered the building yet. I was still in traffic. My shift didn't start until 6. I work in building maintenance for a mid-sized office complex. 12 floors, glass and concrete. It's the kind of place where the lights stay on whether anyone is inside or not. My shift starts in the evening. I handle ventilation systems and water pressure checks. Most of the work is automated. I'm there to confirm that the systems are working as expected. Normally, everything is routine, predictable. I receive notifications on my phone, warnings, status updates. I check the issue, log it, and move on. I had been doing this for 2 years. The rhythm was familiar. That evening in late September, I arrived to find that a maintenance task on the third floor had already been marked as completed. I had not completed it. I opened the log on my tablet. The entry was there, time-stamped, 13 minutes before I had entered the building. It showed my employee ID and a standard completion code. I went to the third floor anyway. The room was empty. The filter had been replaced. The old one was in the bin beside the unit. The work had been done. I checked the access log for the room. There were no entries for the day. I marked the task as reviewed and moved on. I didn't report it. I told myself it was a logging error, a sync issue, something temporary. I closed the panel and went back upstairs. I did not mention it to anyone. The next night, I came in and found 3 tasks already completed. A valve check on the 8th floor, a thermostat recalibration in the executive wing, a refrigerant pressure test in the basement cooler. All of them were logged under my ID. All of them time-stamped before my shift began. I went to each location and verified the work. The valve had been adjusted. The thermostat responded correctly. The refrigerant pressure was stable. Everything had been done. I had not done any of it. I stood in the basement cooler room and looked at the pressure gauge. The reading was exactly where it should be. The log showed that I had recorded it at 5:51 p.m. I had been in my car at 5:51 p.m. I had been sitting in traffic on the highway. I had been listening to the radio. I called my supervisor. His name was Colin. He had worked in the building for 9 years. He answered on the 3rd ring. I explained what I was seeing. I told him that tasks were being completed under my name, that the logs were showing work I had not performed, that someone else must have access to my credentials. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are the tasks completed correctly?" I said yes. He said, "Then log it and move on." I asked if he wanted me to file a report. He said no. I asked if I should change my password. He said it would not make a difference. Then he hung up. I sat in the basement for an hour after Colin hung up. The silence in the maintenance office was composed of low-frequency hums, the whine of the server rack, the rhythmic vibration of the main water pumps behind the concrete wall. I found a stack of old paper logs in the back of the storage cabinet. Physical binders from 6 years ago, before the tablets. The entries were handwritten, different styles of ink. Some pages had smudges or folded corners. In those logs, every task required a physical signature. A filter change was a sequence of manual entries. There was no system response. There was only the recorded action of a person. I looked at the clock. 8:14 p.m. I checked the digital log on the desk monitor. A new entry had appeared. 8th floor, room 812. Occupancy sensor recalibrated. Completed by ID 4492. I had not moved from the basement. According to the building, I was currently on the 8th floor. I stayed in my chair and watched the cursor blink on the screen. I stood in the basement room, listening to the hum of the compressor, and I did not understand what he meant. The following week, it happened every night. Tasks I had not started were finishing before I arrived. Systems I had not touched were being reset. Alerts I had not acknowledged were marked as resolved. The work was always correct. The logs were always clean. I stopped trying to verify everything. There was no point. If I went to check a boiler that had already been logged as inspected, the inspection had been done. If I went to confirm a duct cleaning, the ducts were clean. I began to treat the automated entries as part of the routine. I would arrive at 6. I would check the tablet. I would see which tasks had already been completed under my name. Then I would handle whatever remained. It was efficient. It was easier than it had been before. I kept coming in at 6. The tablet was always charged. The building always sounded the same. Nothing felt urgent. Nothing felt wrong enough to stop. I did not like it. One night in early October, I was assigned to inspect the 9th floor air quality sensors. It was a monthly task. It required entering each office, scanning the wall-mounted sensor, and confirming that the readings matched the central system. I started at the west end of the floor. The first office was empty. Desk, chair, computer monitor, a plant on the windowsill. I scanned the sensor. The reading appeared on my tablet. I logged it. I moved to the next office. The second office was the same. Empty. Clean. I scanned the sensor. I logged it. The third office had a jacket hanging on the back of the chair. A coffee mug on the desk. Papers stacked neatly beside the keyboard. I scanned the sensor. I logged it. When I entered the fourth office, the log updated on my tablet. The task had just been marked complete. I was standing in the office. I was holding the scanner. I had not scanned anything. I looked around the room. It was empty. Desk, chair, monitor, a jacket draped over the back of the chair, a coffee mug on the desk. No one else was there. I lifted the scanner and pointed it at the sensor on the wall. The tablet vibrated. A new notification appeared. Duplicate scan detected. Task already complete. I lowered the scanner. I stood there for a long time. Then I left the office and continued down the hall. The rest of the sensors had already been logged. I did not scan any of them. I walked back to the elevator. I went down to the basement. I sat in the office and looked at the completed task list. All 23 sensors had been logged. The timestamps were spaced exactly 2 minutes apart. The work had been completed in 46 minutes. I had only scanned 3 sensors myself. By mid-October, I had stopped expecting to do most of my work. I would come in. I would check the logs. I would see that the majority of my tasks were already finished. I would spend the rest of my shift walking the floors, waiting for something new to appear. Sometimes it did. A pressure alert would come in. I would head toward the location. By the time I arrived, it would be resolved. The log would show that I had handled it. Other times, nothing would happen at all. I would sit in the basement office, watching the tablet, and the screen would stay blank. I began bringing a book. I would read while I waited. I would look up every few minutes to check the tablet. The screen would still be blank. It felt like I was being phased out. Not fired. Not reassigned. Just slowly made unnecessary. By the end of October, my movements through the building became purely observational. I would pass the cleaning crews in the hallways. They were contractors. They followed their own automated schedules. We did not acknowledge each other. I began to notice the precision of the lighting cycles. At exactly 1 a.m., the lobby lights dimmed by 30%. At 3 a.m., the high-pressure steam valves in the basement performed a self-test. A sharp, mechanical hiss that lasted exactly 4 seconds. I stood in the lobby and watched the building operate. The automated systems did not require my input to maintain these cycles. The glass walls reflected the empty street outside, but the interior remained a closed loop. If I missed a night, The logs would likely continue to populate. The system would confirm the work was performed. The data would remain consistent. I was a variable that the system had already accounted for. One evening, I decided to test it. I was assigned to replace a control board in the sixth-floor HVAC unit. It was a manual task. It required shutting down the system, removing the old board, installing the new one, and restarting everything. It could not be automated. I gathered the tools I needed. I went to the supply room and signed out the replacement board. I took the elevator to the sixth floor. I stood outside the mechanical room and waited. I checked my watch. I counted the minutes. 5 minutes passed. The task did not update. I waited another minute. Still nothing. I opened the door and stepped inside. The control board was already installed. The old board was sitting on the workbench beside the unit. The screws were in a small pile next to it. The new board was mounted in place. The system was running. I checked the log. The task had been completed 4 minutes earlier. While I was standing outside the door, I put the tools back. I returned the unused board to the supply room. I went back to the basement and sat in the office. I did not tell Colin. I did not tell anyone. I simply accepted it. In late October, I began to notice a pattern. The tasks that completed themselves were always tasks I had not started yet. Tasks I was supposed to do. Tasks that were assigned to me, but that I had not begun. If I started a task immediately, it would stay open. I could complete it myself. But if I delayed, even for a few minutes, the system would finish it for me. I tested this carefully. One night, I was assigned to check the pressure relief valves on the 7th floor. There were 6 of them. I went directly to the first valve and began the inspection. The task stayed open. I completed it myself. The next night, I was assigned the same task on the 8th floor. I waited in the basement for 10 minutes before going upstairs. By the time I arrived, all 6 valves had been checked. The log showed my ID. The timestamps were spaced exactly 4 minutes apart. I began to experiment with this. I would delay certain tasks on purpose. The answer was always the same. If I did not begin a task within 15 minutes of it appearing on my tablet, the system would finish it automatically. The logs would show my name. The work would be correct. The timestamps would be precise. I tried different intervals. I waited 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 14 minutes. At 15 minutes, the task would close. Every time, I was not being replaced. I was being responded to. The system was reacting to my absence, to my non-action, to the gap where I should have been. I did not feel surprised. I did not feel relieved. I only felt the shift settle into place. I did not know how to explain this to anyone. I did not try. By early November, I had developed a routine around it. I would come in at 6. I would check the tablet. I would identify which tasks I wanted to complete myself. I would do those immediately. The rest, I would leave alone. Within 20 minutes, they would all be marked complete. One night, I sat in the basement office and decided to do nothing. I did not check the tablet. I did not start any tasks. I simply sat in the chair and waited. I looked at the clock on the wall. 6 p.m. I watched the second hand move. At 6:15, the tablet began to vibrate. Tasks were completing, one after another. Every assignment on my schedule was being logged as finished. I had not moved. I watched the list shrink. I watched the completion codes appear. I watched my entire shift be documented in the span of 8 minutes. When it stopped, the tablet showed a single message. All tasks complete. Shift concluded. It was 6:23. I sat there until 2 in the morning. I did not leave early. I did not tell anyone. I simply stayed in the building, watching the systems run, knowing that everything had already been handled. I walked the floors. I checked the mechanical rooms. I verified that the work had actually been done. Every task, every system, every reading, all of it was correct. The next night, I came in and tried to do my work normally. I went to the fourth floor. I started a routine inspection. The task completed while I was holding the inspection camera. I was in the middle of the work. I was actively performing it. The log updated anyway. Task complete. I lowered the camera. I left the room. I went back to the basement and sat in the office. I did not attempt to complete any other tasks that night. I simply sat there. In mid-November, I began to notice that other people were being affected. I would see the day shift workers leaving at 5. One of them, a woman named Lauren, told me that half of her tasks were finishing before she could get to them. I asked her how long that had been happening. She said about 3 weeks. I asked if she had reported it. She said yes. I asked what Colin had told her. She said he told her not to worry about it. I did not tell her what was happening to me. I did not think it would help. I saw Lauren again a few nights later. She was standing by the vending machine in the lobby. She was not buying anything. She was holding a tablet in one hand and a heavy adjustable wrench in the other. Her uniform was clean. No dust on her sleeves. No grease on her hands. She looked at the display of the vending machine for several minutes without moving. I noticed her toolkit. The metal latches were dull. It looked like it hadn't been opened in several shifts. She carried it with her as she walked toward the service elevator. We did not speak. We occupied the same space, moving according to our assigned schedules, while the building handled the actual maintenance. I watched the elevator doors close behind her. By late November, I stopped doing any tasks at all. I would come in at 6. At 6:15, the tasks would begin to complete. By 6:30, the entire schedule would be logged. I would spend the rest of the night walking the building, checking the systems manually. One night, I went to the third-floor break room. The coffee maker was on. There was a half-full pot sitting on the burner. I poured myself a cup and sat at the table. At 6:15, I heard a faint sound from the hallway. It was the air handler kicking on. I checked my tablet. The third-floor HVAC task had just been marked complete. I got up and walked to the mechanical room. The door was closed. I opened it. The air handler was running. The filter housing was open. A new filter was sitting on top of the unit. It had not been installed yet. I picked it up and installed it myself. I closed the housing. Then I left the room. The log still showed the task as complete. It had been marked finished before I touched anything. One night, I was walking through the 5th-floor corridor when I saw Colin. He was standing outside one of the offices, holding a tablet, staring at the screen. I asked him if his tasks were finishing early too. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Just keep doing what you were doing." On December 18th, I came in and found that my tablet had been updated. The task list was gone. There was only one option now: confirm operational status. I pressed it. A new screen appeared. Building systems. Operational. Confirm. I pressed confirm. The same option was still there. I pressed it again. At 6:15, the tablet vibrated. The confirmation had been logged. I had not pressed anything. The next night, the tablet was gone. I called Colin. I asked him where the tablet was. He said they were being phased out. I asked him what I was supposed to do during my shift. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Make sure everything is running." I said I could do that. He hung up. I have been working without a tablet for 2 weeks now. I come in at 6. I walk through the building. I check the systems. Everything is always running. I do not log anything. I do not confirm anything. I do not start any tasks. The building is quiet. The floors are empty. The systems operate without interruption. I am still scheduled. I still come in every night. I do not know what the logs say about me now. I do not check. If you're still here, This kind of quiet work continues here. Nothing dramatic, just systems and the spaces they leave behind.